"Don't talk to her, kids," my cousin Sarah said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the laughter and chatter filling the room. She tugged her two children closer, tilting her head toward me like I was something to be avoided. "She's just here for free food. She contributes nothing to this family." The sting of her words hit harder than I could prepare for. The sound of forks clinking against plates and chairs scraping across the hardwood seemed to fade into the background. For 1 second, all I could hear was the echo of that sentence in my head. Contributes nothing to this family. Then came the laughter. My aunt let out a cackling laugh, the kind that vibrated through her throat. My uncle, belly round from years of indulgence, slapped his knee so hard the plate in front of him nearly tipped over. Even my own mother, who should have stepped in, glanced down at her wine glass, smirking as though agreeing silently with the cruelty. Hannah stood frozen near the kitchen island, a flimsy paper plate in my hands trembling like it weighed. 100 pounds. Mashed potatoes slid to one side, threatening to fall. My plastic fork slipped and clattered to the floor, drawing more attention to me. Sarah didn't stop there. No, she thrived on moments like this, humiliating someone else to inflate her own fragile pride. She leaned back in her chair, her manicured nails tapping on her glass of Cabernet, her lips twisting into a mock smile. "Oh, don't act so shocked, Hannah. Everyone knows it's true. You don't bring anything to the table. Literally. No job, no contribution. You just show up, eat, and pretend like you belong here." Her words sliced into me with precision. I could feel the heat flooding my cheeks, the prickle of shame crawling up the back of my neck. My throat tightened as I forced a swallow, fighting desperately against the tears pressing at the corners of my eyes. I tried to find a friendly face, someone in the room willing to break this cruelty. My eyes darted to my aunt. She rolled hers at me. To my uncle. He was still chuckling. To my mother. She refused to even meet my gaze. There was no one, not one ally in this room. "Wow," I managed, my voice low and shaky. "In front of everyone." "Really, Sarah?" Sarah smirked wider. "Oh, don't play the victim. Families are about contribution, not freeloading. Maybe if you spent less time sitting around and more time, I don't know, doing something useful, people would actually respect you." Her husband, lounging with a beer in hand, joined in with a smug grin. "Let her be, Sarah. Some people are just made to take, not give. It's survival of the fittest." He laughed at his own words, and the sound rippled across the table, as others joined. Their laughter wasn't just noise, it was a weapon. Each chuckle was another stab, another reminder of how little they thought of me. My plate shook in my hands. The mashed potatoes finally slid off the edge, plopping onto the floor, and the sound only fueled more laughter. "Clumsy, too," Sarah sneered, taking a long, satisfied sip of her wine. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped a rope around it and pulled tighter with every second. I bent down quickly to pick up the mess, desperate to escape the spotlight, desperate to shrink myself smaller than the shame already had. And then, the front door creaked open. At first, the sound barely registered over their laughter, but when heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed across the entryway, one by one the voices quieted. The atmosphere shifted, the air tightening like a storm rolling in. All heads turned toward the doorway. There he was. My husband, Daniel, stood framed, in the soft glow of the hallway light. Tall, broad-shouldered, his presence commanded attention the way a silent judge commands a courtroom. He was dressed sharply, black suit, crisp white shirt open just enough at the collar. His jawline was rigid, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room with an intensity that made even my loudest relatives shrink back in their seats. The silence was immediate. It wasn't just that he'd walked in. It was the way he walked in. Confident, controlled, calculated. Every step of his polished leather shoes against the hardwood seemed to echo, louder than the laughter that had humiliated me moments earlier. "Hannah," Daniel said, his voice calm but edged with something dangerous. "What's going on here?" My breath caught. The plate in my hands trembled so violently he reached forward, steadying it before setting it down on the counter with care. That small gesture, gentle, protective, nearly broke me. Before I could answer, Sarah let out a nervous laugh. She twirled her wineglass, pretending as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Daniel, you came just in time. We were just joking. No harm meant." His eyes cut to her, sharp as a blade. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply let the silence drag long enough to make her squirm in her chair. Daniel then turned, scanning the rest of the room, his gaze lingering on each face. The ones who laughed, the ones who smirked, the ones who sat silent instead of speaking up. No one dared meet his eyes for long. Finally, his attention returned to me. His expression softened, his hand brushing mine gently, grounding me. But when he turned back to the room, his voice was no longer calm. It carried weight. It carried authority. "I think we should have a very different kind of conversation tonight," he said, his tone low but commanding, every word sinking into the air like a verdict. No one dared move. Even the children, confused, stayed frozen with forks halfway to their mouths. The laughter that had filled the house just moments ago was gone, extinguished. The shame that had burned inside me moments earlier was now something else. Anticipation. Because deep down, I knew Daniel wasn't here to play nice. He was here to set things straight, and the silence that followed was heavier than any insult Sarah had ever thrown. The silence clung to the room like thick smoke, suffocating and unescapable. No one dared to move. Daniel's gaze shifted from one family member to the next, his blue eyes sharp enough to pierce through every fake smile and every mask of superiority. The man didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone commanded. The kind of authority that turned laughter into regret. He walked slowly toward the dining table, each step deliberate. "So?" he said finally, his voice low but steady. "Someone here thought it was funny to humiliate my wife." He stopped behind Sarah's chair, standing tall, his shadow falling over her. "Would anyone like to repeat what they just said? To her face? Louder this time so I can hear it too?" Sarah froze, her wineglass trembling slightly in her hand. "Daniel, it was just a joke. We were all laughing. Jokes are meant to be funny." Daniel cut her off, his tone sharp. "But I don't hear anyone laughing now." The room shifted uncomfortably. Chairs creaked. Throats cleared. No one dared meet his eyes. Hannah stood near the counter, still feeling the sting of Sarah's words, but also something new. Relief? A weight lifting, knowing I wasn't standing in this storm alone. My hands trembled, but not from shame. This time, from the adrenaline of watching someone finally defend me. Sarah's husband tried to chuckle, breaking the tension. "Come on, man. Don't take it so seriously. Families tease. It's normal." Daniel's head snapped toward him, and the chuckle died instantly. "Teasing?" Daniel's lips curved into a cold, humorless smile. "You call ganging up on one person, laughing at her, belittling her, shaming her in front of children? Teasing?" The man shifted uncomfortably in his seat, gripping his beer tighter. "It wasn't that deep." "It was exactly that deep," Daniel interrupted. Again, his voice like iron. "And you all know it." He swept his eyes over the table, pausing on each face, forcing them to look down at their plates. "You've spent years pretending this is normal, years of letting cruelty masquerade as tradition. And for what? To feel bigger? To feel better? About your own mediocrity?" My mother finally spoke, her voice cold and measured. "Daniel, don't exaggerate. We're family. Hannah knows how we are." Daniel turned to her, and the sharp disappointment in his eyes made even her, a woman who prided herself on never flinching, shift uneasily. "Yes," he said, his voice dropping lower, quieter, but so much heavier. "She knows exactly how you are." The words hit the table like a hammer. My mother pressed her lips together, her grip on the wine glass tightening. She didn't respond. For the first time that night, I felt something stir inside me. I wasn't just a target standing alone. I had someone at my side who saw it all, who refused to let it slide into silence. My chest loosened, and I lifted my chin slightly. "I didn't come here to be mocked," I said suddenly, my voice trembling but clear. "I came here because I thought family mattered, but apparently I was wrong." The room shifted again. All eyes turned to me. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I held my ground. Sarah snorted. "Oh, please, Hannah. Don't act like some victim. No one forced you to come. If you're that sensitive, maybe you should stay home. Next time." Daniel leaned down, his hand pressing against the back of Sarah's chair as he bent slightly to her level. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Careful," he said softly. "You don't get to decide where my wife belongs." Sarah froze, her smirk faltering. She glanced at her husband for support, but he stayed silent, eyes glued to his plate. Daniel straightened, then turned to the rest of the family. "You've spent years painting Hannah as weak, as useless. But let me tell you something. She's stronger than all of you combined. She's endured your whispers, your backhanded comments, your staged laughter. And she's still here, standing. That alone makes her worth more than your empty arrogance." I gasped softly at his words, emotion surging in my chest. My eyes burned, but this time, not from shame, from pride. The silence was deafening. No one touched their food, no one moved. The air was thick with tension and unspoken guilt. Then Daniel's gaze softened slightly as he turned back to me. He reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Hannah, you don't owe them a thing. Not your silence, not your presence, and certainly not your dignity." My breath caught, my lips parting, but no words came out. Daniel turned, back to the table one last time, his voice firm and unshakable. "So here's what's going to happen. From this moment on, you treat Hannah with the respect she deserves. If you can't do that, then we're done. And if being family means tolerating this behavior, then maybe family isn't worth the title." The words landed heavy, final, undeniable. I glanced around the room. My aunt stared down at her, plate, face flushed. My uncle shifted uncomfortably. My mother's jaw was tight, her eyes darting away from mine. And Sarah, who'd started the entire humiliation, sat pale and silent, her bravado stripped clean. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider in the room. I felt seen, protected, valued. And as I looked at Daniel standing beside me, unwavering, I realized something. This wasn't just about what he said. It was about what I needed to say next. The night wasn't over, and I was ready to speak. Tension was thick enough to choke on. Forks lay abandoned, glasses sat untouched, and no one dared to move. Daniel's words still hung in the air like smoke after a fire, burning into every corner of the room. But I, Hannah, felt something new in my chest, a surge of strength I hadn't felt in years. His defense had lit a flame inside me. For too long, I'd stood silent, swallowing insults, shrinking into the background. Tonight, that version of me was gone. I stepped forward, the scrape of my shoes across the floor loud in the quiet. All eyes turned to me. My palms were slick with sweat, my knees trembling. But my voice was steady. "You want to call me a burden?" I said, locking eyes with Sarah. "Fine. Let's talk about burdens. Let's talk about what's really weighing this family down." Sarah shifted in her chair, her smirk twitching nervously. "Hannah, don't start—" "No." I cut her off sharply, louder than I'd meant to. The force of my own voice startled me. But I didn't back down. You humiliated me in front of your kids, in front of everyone. So let's not pretend this is just harmless teasing. It wasn't. It was cruelty. And you know it. Her children sat frozen, confused, their little eyes darting between us. For the first time, Sarah looked cornered. You say I contribute nothing? I continued, my tone sharp, each word deliberate. Maybe I don't hand out money at every gathering. Maybe I don't brag about vacations or wear designer clothes. But I contribute more than you'll ever admit. I contribute honesty. I contribute loyalty. I contribute by being the one person in this family who still shows up despite knowing exactly how I'll be treated. A low murmur rippled across the table. My aunt whispered something to my uncle, who glanced nervously at me. Even my mother, who usually carried herself with unshakable composure, looked unsettled. I turned to her. And you, Mom, you sat there and let them laugh. You smirked like you agreed with every word. Do you know what it feels like to look for your mother's protection and see nothing but silence? You've called me sensitive, weak, fragile. But it's not weakness to expect kindness. It's not fragility to want respect. Her jaw clenched, her eyes darting down to her glass. She didn't answer. The power in the room shifted. For the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking. They were. I took a deep breath, my hands no longer trembling. I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done letting you decide my worth. If family means humiliation, then I don't need this family. I'd rather stand alone with dignity than sit at a table where cruelty passes for love. The silence that followed was crushing. No one moved, no one breathed. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Then Daniel stepped up beside me, sliding his hand into mine. His grip was firm, grounding. He looked around the table, his voice calm, but laced with finality. You heard her. This ends tonight. Sarah's husband cleared his throat, trying to salvage the moment. Hannah, come on, don't be so dramatic. We're just rough around the edges. I turned to him, my eyes sharp. Rough edges don't cut people to pieces. Cruelty does. And I won't pretend not to notice the difference anymore. Face flushed red and he looked away. The weight of my words pressed down on the room. The laughter that had once humiliated me was gone, replaced by silence thick with guilt. I had cracked something open, something they couldn't stitch back together with excuses. For the first time in years, I felt tall, seen, heard. And as I stood there, hand in Daniel's, I knew this night wasn't just about humiliation. It was about reclamation. They wanted me to stay small, but I had just taken back my voice, and no one at that table would ever forget it. No one at that table dared to move. The silence after my words was louder than any insult Sarah had thrown at me earlier. My heart pounded, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from power. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. Sarah tried to recover, forcing a laugh that came out brittle. So now you've found your voice. Congratulations, Hannah. But don't act like you're above us. You've needed this family more than we've ever needed you. Daniel tightened his hand around mine, but I didn't let him speak this time. I straightened my shoulders and looked her dead in the eye. No, Sarah, that's where you're wrong. I don't need a family that tears me down to feel tall. I don't need validation from people who confuse cruelty with tradition. What I need, what I deserve, is respect. And if that can't come from you, then I'll find it elsewhere. Her smirk faltered. For once, she had no comeback. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Hannah, you're being unfair. Families argue, but we stick together. That's what matters. I shook my head. No. Sticking together doesn't mean watching while someone is humiliated. It doesn't mean silence when your own daughter is treated like a joke. If that's your definition of family, then maybe it's time I stop trying to fit into it. The words landed heavy. My mother blinked, her lips pressing into a tight line, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but final. We came here tonight out of respect, but respect is a two-way street, and it hasn't been offered to Hannah. From this moment forward, things change. Either you treat her as she deserves, or you don't see us at all. Simple as that. The table went dead quiet. No one laughed. No one smiled. My aunt cleared her throat, her face pale. Maybe we were too harsh, she muttered, avoiding my eyes. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever heard from her. I looked around the table, my voice steady. You don't have to like me, but you will stop mocking me. You will stop teaching your kids that humiliation is acceptable, because tonight, I won't let you rewrite who I am anymore. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I had said it. I had taken it back. My dignity, my voice, my worth. Daniel slid his arm protectively around me. We're leaving, he said firmly, and together we walked out of that house. Behind us, the silence we left was deafening, but inside me there was only one sound: freedom, because they would never see me the same way again.